Hello dear learners, welcome to this SWAYAM NPTEL online course on inclusive education. I am Dr. Umakant Prasad, an assistant professor from Department of Education, Vishwabharati Shantiniketan. This is week number 7 and today we are going to discuss lecture number 31, that is recommendations of various commission and committees before 1947 on inclusive education. During this lecture, we will discuss recommendations of various commissions and committees on inclusive education such as Wood Dispatch of 1854, the Hunter Commission of 1882, the Indian University Commission of 1902, the Calcutta University Commission of 1917, the Hatto Committee of 1929 and the Sargent Report of 1944. Between the mid 19th and 20th centuries, British colonial policies significantly influenced India's modern education system. Reforms introduced during this period aimed to strengthen education by establishing a Western style curriculum, creating new administrative structures and expanding both primary and higher education. Although efforts were made to improve access for some marginalized communities such as providing primary education in local languages, promoting women's education and creating opportunities for Muslim and rural populations, however, these were often limited. Missionaries and philanthropists also played an important role using government grants to establish schools, including some of the first institutions for children with visual and hearing impairments. However, the idea of truly inclusive education, especially for people with disabilities, was largely overlooked in the early years. A more complete vision for this only appeared with the Sargent Report of 1944. This report was a key turning point, recommending free and compulsory education for all children, including those with disabilities, and setting the stage for India's post-independence education policies as well. Let us discuss the recommendations of Wood Dispatch. The Wood Dispatch of 1854 did not give any direct plan for education of persons with disabilities. Its main aim was to spread modern education in India through primary school in local languages and higher education in English language and to provide teacher training. However, by introducing the system of grant in aid, it encouraged missionaries and voluntary organizations to open and run schools. Many of these groups later started special schools for visually impaired and hearing impaired children. For example, the first school for the visually impaired students in India was established by a Christian missionary, Miss Annie Sharp in Amritsar in 1887, and the first school for the deaf, that is now called as hearing impaired, was established in Mazgaon, Bombay in 1883, and the name of the school was Bombay Institute for the Deaf Mutes. In this way, the dispatch indirectly helped in the education of persons with disabilities and created an environment where private and philanthropic effort could grow with government support. It also laid the foundation for later developments in teaching, training and educational planning as well. This base made it possible for later committees like Hatto Committee in 1929 and the Sargent Report in 1944 to talk more clearly about education for children with disabilities. Thus, the Wood Dispatch played an important role and indirect role in early history of persons with disabilities in India. The Hunter Commission of 1882. The Indian Education Commission, that is also called as Hunter Commission, was established in 1882 to review the progress of education in British India since the Wood's Dispatch of 1854. Its primary focus was on improving and expanding primary education, which had been largely neglected so far. The Commission recommended that the state take special care in the extension and improvement of primary education, and that it should be imparted in the vernacular languages to reach the masses more effectively. It also suggested that the management of primary education be entrusted to newly formed municipal and district boards, promoting a degree of decentralization and local control. The Hunter Commission's recommendations directly addressed the educational needs of several marginalized groups, which can be seen as an early forms of inclusive policy. The Commission specifically highlighted the inadequate facilities for female education, particularly outside of the presidency towns, and suggested for their expansion. It also gave special attention to the education of Muslims, recommending measures to improve their access to schooling. The Hunter Commission made progressive recommendations, but also had clear limitations. It supported wider access to primary education, but suggested reducing government control over secondary and higher education. These were to be managed by private institutions with grant in aid system. This increased Indian involvement, but also kept higher education mostly for the rich people. The Commission also divided the curriculum into a literary stream for university and a vocational stream for others. This reinforced social divisions. While it helped expand primary education and encouraged participation, it also created a dual structure in education that lasted for many years. The Indian University Commission of 1902. The Indian University Commission was set up in 1902 by Lord Curzon to study higher education in India. The Commission reviewed the working of universities and suggested reforms. It stressed on discipline, efficiency, and academic standards. The Commission's report was a significant step in shaping the higher education system in British India, but it did not include provisions for the education of people with disabilities or those from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. The focus was on regulating the universities than expanding access. As a result, opportunities for many groups, including disadvantaged communities, remained limited. The Commission's report was criticized by Indian leaders, including Gopal Krishna Gokhale, who felt that it was a move to limit higher education for Indians. The reforms were viewed as a way to reduce the number of Indian graduates who could potentially challenge British rule. While the Commission's goal was to improve quality, its effect was to make university education less accessible to many people, especially those with disadvantaged sections. The idea of making education open to all sections of the society was not emphasized by the Commission. Thus, while it improved administration, it failed to promote inclusiveness. The Calcutta University Commission of 1970. The Calcutta University Commission of 1917, also called the Sadler Commission, was formed in 1917 under the leadership of Michael Sadler. Its main task was to study the problems of Calcutta University. Later, it also reviewed the conditions of higher education in the whole country. The Commission concluded that deficiencies in school education had a negative impact on the overall quality of higher education institutions. Its recommendations on women education were a significant part of its report. The Commission suggested that a special board for women's education should be established within Calcutta University to oversee and promote female education. It also recommended the creation of separate Parda school for girls from conservative families, acknowledging the social customs of the time. The commission also encouraged the training of more women teachers and the provision of medical courses for women, recognizing the need for women to enter professional fields. In the field of inclusive education, the commission supported women education and vocational training. It wanted education to prepare students for both job and life as well. It promoted regional studies and introduced courses relevant to local needs. Although it did not fully solve the problem of access for the poor, it gave new ideas to make education more useful and inclusive. Hatto Committee. The Hatto Committee was set up in 1929 to study the progress of education in India. It looked closely at problems in primary, secondary and higher education. The committee noticed that many children were enrolled in schools, but most of them dropped out before completing their studies. This problem was very serious for poor and marginalized groups. The committee's recommendations, however, did not directly address inclusive education in the modern sense of the terms, but its focus was on improving the general education system. It emphasized the need for better trained and better paid teachers and a more practical and relevant curriculum and proper inspections of schools. The committee also recommended that primary schools should serve as centers for rural community uplift, including adult education and medical aid. This was an early attempt to connect schools with the wider needs of the community, which has since become a key feature of inclusive education in later years. The Hatto Committee also considered the education of women and recommended that boys and girls be given equal educational opportunities. It recommended establishing more primary schools for girls and adding subjects such as home science and music to the secondary school curriculum. The committee also stressed the need for more female teachers. While not explicitly about inclusive education for people with disabilities, these recommendations aim to reduce existing social and gender barriers to education. The Sargent Report of 1944. The Sargent Report of 1944 officially called the report of the Central Advisory Board of Education on post-war educational development in India was an important document in Indian education. It was prepared by Sir John Sargent, who was the educational advisor to the Government of India at the moment. The report gave a detailed plan for the future of education in India. Its aim was to create a system that was free, universal and modern. One of the most important recommendations was free and compulsory education for all children between 6 to 14 years old. At the time, education in India was mainly for the privileged classes. The idea of universal education for every child was new at the moment. The report tried to remove social and economic barriers and make education accessible to all. The report also stressed the need for inclusive education indirectly. It stated that children with disabilities must also receive proper schooling. Special schools and classes were recommended for them. At the same time, the report suggested integrating these children into regular schools whenever possible. The idea of inclusion was quite advanced for the period. The Sargent report also gave importance to girls' education. It advocated that girls should get the same opportunities as boys. It stated that national progress depends upon the education of men and women equally. This was a progressive thought as girls' education was not widely valued at the time. However, there were many challenges. The plan required large financial resources which were not easy to arrange during colonial rule. The report came just before independence, so its full implementation was left to Free India. In conclusion, we can say the history of modern education in India during the British period shows a gradual evolution towards inclusivity through often in indirect or limited ways. From Wood's dispatch in 1954 to the Sargent report of 1944, commissions shaped the education system. These efforts had different impacts on marginalized groups like women, the poor and the people with disabilities. Wood's dispatch indirectly helped schools for children with disabilities by supporting missionary work. The Hunter Commission of 1882 focused on primary education, especially for women and Muslims. The Calcutta University Commission of 1917 highlighted women's education and vocational training, whereas the Hutto Committee of 1929 addressed high dropout rates. Finally, the Sargent report of 1944 proposed free education for all children, including those with disabilities. This report set the stage for inclusive education in independent India. There are some references here. Thank you.